This is Polyamory Weekly, tales from the front of responsible non-monogamy from a pansexual, kink-friendly point of view. A warning for our under 18 listeners. This is an adult-oriented podcast about really lascivious things, like communication and honesty in relationships. If you're under 18 and looking for upfront advice and answers to questions about sex, please visit scarletteen.com.
This is Polyamory Weekly, episode number 505 for February 17th, 2017. On this week's show, we have When Do You Know If Poly Is Right For You? That's coming up on this week's show. Hello, everybody. This is Lusty Guy with your favorite host.
This is Minx. We decided to mix it up. So I'm wondering if some people were panicking, going, oh my God, it's just Lusty Guy.
Yeah, what's happened? What has he done with her? Bring back Minx. You know, I kind of hope so. I enjoy giving people a little shot of adrenaline sometime, and if some of the listeners right then went, well, I kind of get a kick out of that.
But there were probably some that were like, ooh, Lusty Guy.
Oh, I don't know about that. I think everybody was probably like, what's going on?
Oh, people love you.
Some. And I'm lucky for it.
But we have a couple of lots of fun stuff for the host chat segment this week. First of all, we have a lot of new listeners after I appeared on Dan Savage's podcast. So welcome to all our new Poly Weekly listeners.
Welcome, welcome. The water is fine, and I'm sure over time you will love and hate me too.
So a few announcements this week before we get to our main topic, how do I know if poly's right for me? The first one is, okay, we announced it last week, so I won't do a drum roll again, but our new ebook, No Dick Pics, Your Guide to Creating an Irresistible Online Dating Profile is out. Yes, you can go to polyweekly.com and click on books, or you can just go to /no-dick-pics and download our new ebook. And this does focus on basically how to optimize your online dating profile with a specific focus on OkCupid and FetLife so that you can maximize your experience and hopefully get fewer dick pics unless you ask for them.
That's right. Solicited dick pics are different than unsolicited dick pics. I just have to say I'm really proud of this book. This is our first book that we co-wrote together.
That's true.
From stem to stern. We've done content in other situations, but not a book, ebook or otherwise. And I'm really proud of it. I'm happy that it's out there. So far, everybody seems to like it. So if you're sending dick pics, you need this book.
Or if you're receiving a lot of dick pics and you want to optimize your profile so that you receive fewer unsolicited dick pics and you get more qualified applicants in your dating inbox, that's really what we're shooting for. We both have marketing backgrounds and we approached it from a marketing mechanism. This is something I put into practice in my online dating life, and the ebook's only $4.99, so We're pretty cheap. We're cheap dates.
Oh, yeah. Fast, cheap, and easy. My 3 favorite words.
We also, just a few weeks ago, were at Poly Living in Philadelphia.
And had a fantastic time, by the way. Shout out to Robin Trask, who puts on a great show.
And it was just it's always an amazing experience. We always love meeting our listeners. We love hearing your stories. Everyone was wonderful. The dancing was really great. I love that there was a 70s disco theme, so we even got to do a little swing dancing, which is really fun.
We did. It was really fun. The content was also really nice. There was a lot of really good topical stuff about today, including politics, which I am happy to see the poly world embrace, and a lot of good conversations about diversity in the poly space. Really a solid time.
And I have to say, if I may toot my own horn, my keynote on inclusion in the poly world went over really well, which is great because, man, I lamented over that thing. It was, the skinny white chick, the skinny heterosexual cisgendered white chick talking about inclusion. I really wasn't sure that I was even the right person, but it was very well received. And there is a Facebook Live video of it, which, I should post on the blog. I will post a link to that on the blog at polyweekly.com. I tweeted and Facebooked everything at the time, but if you want to see the keynote, it's only like 15 minutes long. It went over really well. Robin did a good job of promoting inclusion, which was the theme of this year's event, in the face of Cheeto Face McTwitter thumbs and a lot of racism and the rise of white supremacy here in the States. It was very important that we really start focusing on that. And we did. And there was a lot more diversity in this event in terms of, that I've ever seen before, in terms of ethnicity, in terms of age, and even levels of ability, and also gender and identity and sexual orientation as well. So kudos to Robin for walking the walk and not just talking the talk and actually making the event more diverse.
Absolutely. And kudos to all of those people who may not have always felt like they see themselves in the poly community, but came to this event anyway. Bravo.
It was really wonderful.
Both.
Bravo, whatever.
Is there a genderless bravo? That's Italian, right? Yeah, it's Italian.
I don't know. I'm sure somebody will write in and tell us.
Please let me know.
Or I'll Google it.
Yeah, just curious.
One more quick announcement, and that is that there is a Poly event coming up called Poly Big Fun. Love the title of the event. March 16th through the 19th. This is in Texas at Bastrop State Park. And I'll provide a link to that in the show notes at polyweekly.com, or if you have the Polyweekly app on your iPhone or Android device, then it will be right there in the attached show notes. This week, Polyamory in the News is about television. There's a TV series called You, Me, Her. It's a poly TV series, and it's starting its second season right now. Now, I should give a disclaimer and say I haven't watched any of this.
No, me either. It's on the Audience Network, apparently.
Yeah, and you can get it on Netflix in some regions. It's select regions, so it's not everywhere.
I'd love to have been in the boardroom when that decision was decided. I mean, where do you... I'm sure there was some macro thing. It wasn't based on content. It's distribution rights.
Big data.
But nevertheless, I would love to envision these guys saying, okay, polyamorous stuff, no, we're not shipping that into Alabama. LA can have that, but not Alabama.
None of those red states. I have no idea. But
Me either.
It's a poly TV show. And apparently, the first season was really, it's basically about a couple that brings on your standard unicorn, hot by babe, and it was sort of a comedy of errors. But they're actually apparently making a more conscious effort in the second season to actually make it more seriously about what polyamory is really like. So I'm going to have to start watching at least some of it, I think.
A little podcaster responsibility.
Yeah, in all my spare time.
But you have so much of it.
I think we might be able to sacrifice a date night and maybe not watch Archer and watch You, Me, Her instead.
Oh, substitute. Still have the date night. Just watch that instead of Archer. Ah, sure. That's fine. It's the cuddles that matter to me. I really don't care what's on TV.
Phrasing. And this week's topic is a listener writing in with a question. And it was a bit long, so I'm going to give a briefer summary of the question. So we have Emily and Eric. They're trying their first poly relationships. It was his idea, but she wasn't really sure about it. Now, that's kind of unusual right there. Usually it's the woman that proposes polyamory. So he had a few encounters with a woman who was out of town, but now Eric has connected with an old friend who is in town, and Emily is feeling overwhelmed. She writes, "If I already am having such a hard time with the small things like they're just making out, how am I ever going to be okay when we get to the bigger things?" And she and Eric communicated about it, but she writes, "It seems like he's doing everything right to help me, but it's hard to think that I will ever be in a space where I feel good about taking bigger steps." or any steps at all. Additionally, I feel like knowing the desire is building between them is just as hard to deal with as if they had fucked already. AKA, even if we take things slow, knowing that the desire is there is hard on me. On paper, polyamory makes so much sense to me, and I know it isn't easy, but whenever something comes up, I think, why am I doing this to myself? This doesn't feel good. Maybe polyamory isn't for me. I love Eric so much, and I want to try to make this work. When will I know if this is something I can do or not? I think it's fair to say that probably what Emily is experiencing is experience shock. She likes the idea. She thinks she's going to feel one way in a situation. She gets in that situation and she does not feel the way that she thought she was going to feel and then starts punishing herself for it.
Well, I definitely think that that latter part is accurate, that she's not feeling the way that she wants to feel and is punishing herself for it. That's right.
She is shoulding herself to death.
There's some shoulds there, I think. Yeah,
Yeah.
I absolutely think so.
Yeah.
And there's some borrowing of trouble there as well. So, for example, when you say, if the little stuff bothers me so much, how will I deal with the big stuff? Well, maybe there is no little or big stuff in your heart. It's all just stuff. And this little stuff that you're receiving as big stuff is practice, so that when you get to the big stuff, you'll have practiced enough and it won't actually be big stuff. There's two different ways to look at those things.
Yeah, and one of the things I think is important to understand is that what you're dealing with right now is not actually the stuff. What you're dealing with right now is your own imagination and your own fears. So the fact that they're making out or whatever, you're basically taking your fear and letting it run amok. And of course, what you do when you're afraid of something is you imagine the worst thing possible. But it doesn't sound like you've actually dealt with this woman as a real person. I don't know if you've met her or not, but you haven't actually dealt with reality. What you have dealt with so far is what your imagination has concocted as the perfect cocktail of fear for you. So the fact that not too much has actually happened yet, and the fact that you're just running around to the most extreme fear tells me that one of the things you can do, not that you asked, when will I know if it's okay?
And we'll get to that, by the way.
Right. And what I'm answering is, well, let's put in maybe some coping mechanisms to help you deal with your fear, and so that you'll actually be dealing with the situation in front of you instead of the horrible, terrible monster that your fear has constructed for you to battle, which is way too large.
Now, one thing to know, in these interactions, most of the time, assuming that everybody is operating with goodwill and everybody is being, honest and true to their agreements within the relationship, you're really never going to deal with what they're doing. You're always going to be dealing with you. It's always going to be you that is the source of your feelings and emotions. So really, big things, little things, whatever they're doing, your fears, your uncertainties, your emotional reactions will always be yours. And they're going to be what you have to deal with, if that makes any sense.
So should we give her this standard exercise to deal with her fears and her jealousies?
Well, I think it makes sense to go ahead and play out this string of coping, and then we'll actually answer the question. So, yeah, let's go ahead and hit whatever.
Let's build dramatic tension.
That's right. That's right.
So there are a couple of things we recommend when you're dealing with some type of fear or insecurity. It's most often referred to as jealousy, but it could be any number of fears or insecurities that you're facing. So one of the things we do is to do the and then what exercise and take it to the extreme. So the point of this of the and then what exercise is to find out what it is that you're really afraid of, so you can confront your actual fear instead of the thing that your fear is masking.
Well, and often to illustrate that the fear itself is bound not in external reality, but in your own set of assumptions. So, for example, if you are afraid that your partner is going to go out on a date and, well, that makes me afraid. Why does that make me afraid? Well, because I'm afraid that they may find someone better than me. And then what? Well, then they may leave me. And then what? And then I will be miserable. And then what? And then I'll be miserable and I'll never recover. And then what? And then I'll be miserable and I'll never recover and nobody will ever want to be with me. And then what? I'll be miserable, I'll never recover, and nobody will ever want to be with me, and I'll die alone and unloved. Okay. Now you've learned something. right? You get to a point where that analysis goes, that's not going to happen. That fear is about me more than what's really going to happen. And this exercise can help you get a handle on your fears. Look into your fears, not away from your fears.
Exactly. And whenever I do this exercise, it always tends to end up with, and then I die homeless and alone. And when I get to dying homeless and alone, now I know what I'm actually afraid of, which typically has very little to do with the actual situation. It's just that is a thing that I'm afraid of. So if there is an opportunity for a situation to present itself in such a way that that fear can surface, well, then my brain's going to surface that fear. So the question to ask yourself is, what am I afraid of? I'm afraid, as you said, I'm afraid he'll leave me. And you just continue saying, and then what, and then what, and then what, until you get to the equivalent of dying homeless and alone.
You'll know what that is for you.
Yeah, exactly. And we're giving the shortened version of it here, but that's a way to figure out what you're actually afraid of. So now you can actually address your fears and insecurities, which, as Lusty Guy has pointed out, don't have anything to do with Eric or the woman he's dating and have everything to do with you. And the great news about that is that once you own that shit and you know it's about you, now you are empowered to do something about it. Now you can develop your own coping mechanisms whenever that happens. And this is actually very handy also for things at work, with family. This isn't just for jealousy. This is a great technique for getting to the root of your fear and overcoming any type of, emotional or interpersonal fears.
Yeah, I actually ran into this in acting. I learned it in an acting class taught by a casting director.
Now, the other thing we recommend is a quickie 3Ds of a thing to do when your partner is out on a date.
That's right. Here's how to get through those exact moments when they're gone and with somebody else and you're not.
And the creepy fear monster starts to jump back in. I called it the chattering monkeys, when your worst fears start to chatter up to the surface. So it's 3Ds: discuss, distract, do.
Before the event, discuss everything with your partner. Make sure that you each know what's going on, that you're clear as you can be with each other about your feelings, that everybody's expectations about behavior and sexual transmitted diseases and safety has been completely, adequately, openly addressed, and anything else you may want to talk about. Discuss.
I would also encourage you to voice your fears at that time and say, this is what I'm afraid of, this is what I'm facing, this is what I'm coping with. And your partner can listen, can provide any reassurances, but having those fears out in the open and discussing that beforehand, just saying the fear out loud to your partner and maybe getting a little bit of reassurance right then, not, oh, do you not want me to go? But saying, honey, I love you, I want to be with you, I don't want to leave you, this is going to make us better, whatever it is that will help you feel better. So that's discussed. Number 2 is
distract. During the event, while they're out on their own, you be out on yours. Do something for you that's fun, that's a nice distraction. Oftentimes, this will be something that the partner themselves wouldn't enjoy. You get to go out and have your guilt-free fun knowing that you're doing something that they wouldn't even like.
Exactly. Do something that is a splurge or a luxury for you. For some people, it's a bubble bath. For others, what does Elle do when you're out doing things and she finally gets the house to herself?
Craft. She gets into her crafts. She also likes to look at bad entertainment that I would tease her for.
Yeah, there you go. So whatever it is that would be, and for others, it's I want to go out with my girlfriends. Like I want to be, if you're more extroverted, maybe you want to have some company and do something that you don't normally have time or energy to do. And the third one is
do. After the event, when you get back together, do each other in some way that's relevant and bonding to you. That might be sitting down and having a nice breakfast together and talking about things. It might be a really fun romp. It might be a road trip. It might be a game of Magic. Whatever it is, do some bonding experience together.
Reconnect to reconfirm your bond.
Discuss, distract, and do. the 3-step process for getting through the time when your partner's on a date with somebody else.
You sound like a game show host.
I'm trying. You wanted me to be louder.
So should we actually answer the question she asked?
Well, I think we should. So when will you know if poly's right for you or not? I'm going to start by making an analogy here. You are trying to, since you're somebody who was not naturally and of your own and always in all your life poly, you're trying to transform yourself from these paradigms that you've had to a polyamorous paradigm. I'm going to make the analogy here of running a marathon. This is not a sprint. It's not an instant thing that you can just snap your fingers and do. It is a long-term application of effort, like a marathon. Now, anybody who ever runs I used to do triathlons, anybody who does any races like this has a 3-letter abbreviation that they hate to hear. DNF. Did not finish. You did not finish the race. It happens to all of us. Everybody gets one at some point. And that's when they pull the ripcord and say, it's no longer good for me to try to complete this marathon. I have to stop. We don't like it, but sometimes we have to do it. So what you're asking is, when do you pull that ripcord? When do you do the DNF? Well, just like in the marathon, you do it when you're going to hurt yourself. You do it when achieving the goal is no longer going to produce a better you. So, if it's a marathon, you do it when you get sick, when you've got a particular kind of muscle pull, when you feel the wrong kind of pain. In life, you do it when the existence of this relationship is making you behave in ways that you are not happy with. For example, with me, when I was trying to behave monogamously, I was unable to maintain my relationship commitments. I kept having sex with other people. I didn't lie about it. I came home and said so immediately, but I felt miserable all the time, and I wasn't behaving in the way that was my best me. And after a year or so of it, I pulled that ripcord. When you're going to pull that cord, when you're going to say, this is no longer making me a good me, in the final analysis, you're the only one who can make that decision. But your guiding parameters should be, am I behaving in a way which is a better me because of this relationship? Or am I behaving in a way which is a worse me in this relationship? Are you abusing food? Are you binge eating because you're unhappy? Are you having problems with some kind of addiction? Are you lying to yourself or your partners? Are you, what are some other standard coping mechanisms, if not food or alcohol? Gaming. Are you spending a lot of time gaming? Are there things that you're doing?
I love that we go for the dorky thing right away.
Well, that's me, right? That's whatever it might be. It could be that you're spending too much money on Amazon. Whatever coping mechanism you have that is a distraction that prevents you from looking at what's going on in your life, are you doing too much of that? Okay, then maybe it's time to pull that cord. When you are living in a way which is right for you, you will be running a marathon that makes you feel good.
Now, that being said, the first thing that you said is really true. This is a marathon, not a sprint. Polyamory is a lot more disruptive than people tend to believe at first. As you say, it very often sounds like a good idea. I personally think it is a good idea for a lot of people. And just because you believe it's a good idea doesn't mean that it's an easy path. Society is culturally constructed only to support monogamy. It can be difficult to get emotional support if you don't have poly friends, for example. If you go to your monogamous friends and tell them how you're feeling, they're like, well, that's what you get for trying poly. It's not terribly helpful, right? So if you don't have a support network that understands what it's like, then, all the messaging you can get can be negative, right? So it's a lot more disruptive than it sounds. So I would also encourage you to make some allowances for that. It's often not as easy as it sounds, and typically the first poly relationship can be a little bit rocky. That's not unusual. Just like your first monogamous relationship was probably fraught with all kinds of tension and questions, and does he, and is he, and do I? If you think back to your first monogamous relationship and how many questions and insecurities there were there, polyamory is kind of like starting over again. You kind of are starting from scratch. So a lot of that's going to be there. And part of your job is to distinguish that typical level of confusion and insecurity with pulling the cord and knowing that it's actually not right for you.
That's right. But again, only you can make that final call. Just like the runner in the race, they're the only ones who know when that pain in the leg goes from, yeah, it hurts because I'm running, to, no, that's a wrong burning pain. Something's gone wrong.
Indeed.
And when you feel that, you need to respect it. There is no one relationship style for everybody. Monogamy isn't right for everybody. Polyamory isn't right for everybody. There's no more advanced way. The more advanced way is the way that works best for you. And in the final analysis, watch your behavior. Look at what you're doing. And if you are behaving in ways that suggest that you're distracting yourself or harming yourself because of this relationship choice, then it's probably not right for you. If, on the other hand, you're just tired and miserable like you would be when you're running a race, but you know you're going to hit that endorphin high at some point, and then you're going to be cruising. You know that's coming. You know the end is worth it. Then you keep racing. But only you can figure out whether or not you want to keep lifting your feet.
It's time for your Happy Poly Moment of the Week, brought to you by Fubbly Polyamorists everywhere. And this week's Happy Poly Moment is from Friggin' Limey, who says, after a 5-year poly hiatus following an unsuccessful poly marriage with a primary, I now find myself in a very happy secondary for the first time, and it rocks. I met my lover's husband for the first time a few months back, just shortly after we had started seeing each other. We all went out for dinner, and all of us are poly, by the way. They are relatively new to poly and are finding their way through it. It seems they were more used to polyfuckery up until the time of meeting me. Anyway, at one point during dinner, I looked him straight in the eye and asked him, promise me one thing, that if I ever start to come between you and your wife, please let at least her know, and hopefully me too. He totally got it and smiled. I immediately felt a mutual trust, as I had total respect for them as a primary couple. Minutes after, I asked him to stand up and give me a hug. He did. And for a man who's not very touchy-feely, I was very honored. I'll never forget that moment. I just love these two.
No, I think anybody who's got a name like Frickin' Limey either needs to call in their comments so we can hear the accent, or Mink should have to do the accent.
Oh, my British accent kind of sucks.
Well, I mean, what is it? Is it a? I mean, it's hard to say. Has she got a posh accent? Does she have
He?
Excuse me, my bad.
Oh, you don't know that because you don't know his real name. Okay.
I didn't see.
I didn't put it on the show notes.
I should say they anyway.
This person.
Yes,
this individual.
Person. My bad. So you don't know what kind of English accent is it? Is it RP or whatever? But nevertheless, with a name like Friggin' Limey, you should call it in so we can hear it.
Yes, please. We love our 60 accents.
We do.
And I'd like to welcome our newest Poly Playmate, Meredith, who joined the Poly Playmate at the $1.99 a month level. This is the subscriber level where you do help to support the podcast and pay for our bandwidth and the brand spanking new website, which is super awesome looking. And we really appreciate our Playmates that just make it possible for us to do so much on Poly Weekly.
Thank you, Meredith.
And with that, this is the part where we say, make this show better. If you have questions, comments, or feedback, email polyweekly@gmail.com or call into our comment line at 802-505-POLY. If you ever can't remember that, it's always in the show notes at polyweekly.com or on your app if you have one of the apps for your phone. You can also find us on Facebook, facebook.com/polyweekly, where we post all the episodes as well as other Poly in the News articles, surveys, scholarly articles, just all kinds of awesome Poly shit is what we do. Also on Twitter at Polyweekly, and I'm at Cunning Minx, and other places, but those are the main ones. Well, with that, I think we can say thank you for listening. And
thank you very much, as always.
And remember,
it's not all about the sex.
Not all. Some sex. Good amount of sex.
Much.
A lot of sex.